Hey guys, welcome back to Spellbound. I'm BJ the Book Witch, and this is the first in a series of book recommendations inspired by the weather. So I know a lot of us are mood readers. Go ahead, try it. Wrong, somber. Also, I'm talking about a different kind of mood reading, the kind where we pick our books depending on our mood. But have you ever tried to match your book to the weather? It's pretty similar to mood reading because there's still definitely a vibe that you're trying to capture. If you haven't already done it, I recommend giving it a try. And to make things easier for you, I've compiled a list of great fiction reads that match the weather. Now hear me out. The more that I cover up one eye, I feel like the more glamorous I am. So by the end of this video, I'll probably just look like this or something and be like, look at how incredibly glamorous I am, because glam equals covering an eyeball, a la Jessica Rabbit. Glam, 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 glam. Glam. The good news is none of these books are terribly long, so they should be easily readable in 1 to 2 sittings. So basically enough time to finish the book while you're under the weather. So let's get started with 8 books for the weather you're under. Fiction. Sunny and blazing. The first type of weather is sunny and blazing. So I live in Orlando, Florida, so this is my weather about 80% of the year. It's too hot to sit in the sunlight, there's no breeze, no cloud cover, just extremely bright and extremely hot. But don't worry, I've got a book for that. Brimstone by Cherie. Published in 2017, this book follows Alice Dartle, plagued with dreams and nightmares of a shell-shocked war veteran. As an amateur clairvoyant, she believes that she can help him, so she travels to Cassadaga, Florida to work with a group of spiritualists to try and connect with the man who's been haunting her. But as she does, she pieces together a mystery and discovers a force far more threatening than a haunted spirit. Okay, BEEJ, why this book? Well, first of all, it's set in Florida. So by reading this book, preferably outside and with sunscreen, you can feel the full effects of Alice's experience in the book. Second, this book deals a lot with fire. The war veteran is connected to fire, the spiritualist camp experiences a fire, and there's a general looming fear of the element of fire and heat itself. And being outside in Florida for more than 10 minutes can kind of make you feel that way too. And finally, this is a book about Cassadaga that doesn't get on my nerves. So Cassadaga, Florida is a real place, and it's coined itself the psychic capital of the world. It's actually where I spent my bachelorette weekend. So anyway, at the turn of the century, spiritualism was all the rage. Seances, mediumship, clairvoyance, divination, all the things. And at that time, a group of spiritualists from Cassadaga, New York decided to branch out and move down south. They chose a location next to a spring that was said to have healing properties by the local Native Americans. And eventually, spiritualism fell out of vogue in the major cities. But the spiritualist camp down here, the Cassadaga Spiritualist Camp, or the CSC, remained. And today, psychics, mediums, clairvoyants, and spiritualists can come from all over to attend courses, participate in seances, and even receive accreditation. And guest visitors and tourists can come and see Cassadaga for themselves, and spend a bachelorette weekend if they want to. So, sunny and blazing, I recommend Brimstone by Cherie. It's also just a really good book. Rainy days. So we all know those rainy days. Days where we want to put on some cozy socks and snuggle up with a good book and some tea. On those days, we usually might reach for a more somber book, or a book that, let's be honest, is gonna make us cry. Here in Florida, we get those rainstorms a lot, but they only last like an hour. So if I'm gonna do that, I've gotta read fast. Or find a short book. My recommendation for a cozy rainy day read is Wit, a one-act play by Margaret Edson. This book, or play, and winner of multiple major awards, takes a brilliant look at the timeless question of what makes life worth living. A brilliant and sharp English professor is dying of cancer, and in her final days she reflects on her favorite lectures, her favorite literary characters, and her own life. It sounds depressing, but it's not. It's actually very inspiring, and the writing is spectacular and obviously very witty. For lovers of language, literature, and English, I highly recommend it. It actually takes less time to read the book than to watch the movie, but if reading dramatic writing isn't your thing, then I definitely recommend the movie. It stars the extraordinarily talented Emma Thompson, and I think it's on HBO. Fox's Wedding. So, you know whenever it rains, but it's still really light outside, and there's like a really thin cloud cover, and you can still see the sun, and you can see the sunbeams on the rain? That's what's known as Fox's Wedding. It's a mostly Eastern fairy tale or folk story, and it's pretty much just a warning to children to not go wander off into the woods, because this is the only time that Fox won't hide from people. Fox and his bride and all of the wedding guests will be out of their burrows, out of their homes, and they'll be doing a great wedding processional followed by a wedding feast. And if Fox sees any children around, he will snatch them and serve them at the feast. And this weather is unnerving. You know, it's raining, but with the sun and the light reflecting on the drizzle, it gives it this very creepy vibe. Kind of liminal or in between and a little otherworldly. So, my book recommendation is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Published in 2013, this story is about a middle-aged man who returns to his childhood home to attend a funeral. At his home, he is flooded with memories of his best friend and next-door neighbor, and the pond behind her house, and that one spot where that guy committed suicide in his car. Goodreads says, a groundbreaking work of a master, The Ocean at the End of the Lane is told with a rare understanding of all that makes us human, and shows the power of stories to reveal and shelter us from the darkness inside and out. It is a stirring, terrifying, and elegiac fable as delicate as a butterfly's wing and as menacing as a knife in the dark. Like this weather, this book carries with it those sort of hinted at sinister vibes, like scary secrets told in broad daylight. And for more on this type of vibe, I recommend checking out the film Dreams by Akira Kurosawa. This 1990 film perfectly captures the vibe that I'm talking about through 8 interwoven vignettes, the first of which is called Sunshine Through the Rain and is about Fox's wedding. Someone so kindly ripped it and put it on YouTube, so I'll add the link to that right here. Snow Day.
Believe it or not, I don't experience this one much. But for snow days, I recommend We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This is one of my favorite books, and in true Shirley Jackson fashion, this has seriously got those creepy gothic house vibes. This story is about Mary Catherine and her sister Constance, who live in a giant house at the edge of town with only a couple of relatives. Everyone else in the family is dead, and everyone in the town hates the family, and those two things are related. While this book doesn't feature any snow or winter wonderland themes, it does capture that cozy home, isolated feeling that winter can sometimes bring. And for more cabin fever, I recommend checking out Agatha Christie's most famous novella, And Then There Were None.
Overcast and Dreary. Now there are some days when the rain just doesn't come, but the sky is pregnant and thick with the tension of unfallen rain. These are the days when the sky is dark and bleak and completely overcast with no sunlight. But there's also no rain, just this long stretch of bleakness, never beyond the ever-present threat of a storm. For this weather, I recommend At the Water's Edge by Sara Gruen. She also wrote Water for Elephants. During the height of World War II, Maddie, a Philadelphia socialite, and her husband's best friend traveled to Scotland. After embarrassing themselves publicly at the social event of the season, Maddie's husband attempts to regain his claim to his money, which his parents have cut off, by proving the existence of the Loch Ness Monster. Each day while her husband and his friend go monster hunting, Maddie's left alone, in a foreign country, in the middle of a war, with no discernible skills or expectations. And over the course of the book, Maddie discovers agency, independence, and herself. For fans of Cold Mountain by Charles Fraser, this is definitely a slower-paced book with a huge payoff. It's dreary and bleak and paints a very clear picture of what life is really like during the heart of war, especially for a woman. But, like the weather, the tension for the coming storm builds on every page. I love this book. Blustery. Okay, so blustery weather. Okay, blustery weather. This is that windy, gusty, leaves swirling, owl's treehouse falling out of the tree kind of weather. This isn't your average breeze. This is Piglet's scarf unraveling and flying away like a kite. Clearly, my only connection to this weather are plot points from Winnie the Pooh. Either way, it's a neat weather pattern, and it's kind of tense. And it involves more than just this general feeling of unsettledness, but this mixture of different ideas and thought patterns and beliefs. Like, it's not so acute that it forms a tornado or anything, but when I think of a blustery day, I think of a landscape with differing ideals and a general sense of discontentment with change. So my book recommendation for this weather is The Witches of New York by Amie McKay. Set in 1880, this story follows Adelaide and Eleanor as they open a tinctures and herb shop in New York. One day, a young woman named Beatrice shows up and offers comfort to one of the store's patrons in the form of mediumship. She is hired on to the store by Eleanor and helps run the shop as well as offer her clairvoyant services. But through their day-to-day routine and everything, there is this church group operating in the background. And they begin on the periphery of the story and then eventually gain more of a presence. And they're handing out flyers and they're basically trying to start a new witch hunt. It's very reminiscent of the Salem witch trials and the witch hunts at the height of the Malleus Maleficarum. And eventually, the tension of the times and the culture and fear and persecution of women becomes unavoidable for our characters. It's a great book. It's not too scary, it's not too violent, it's not a thriller. It's just fiction, but on a subject matter that involves real conflicting worldviews and the tensions and problems it can cause. So in this way, it really does match the vibe of a blustery day. Quiet and ominous. Okay, so this one's rare, but it still happens, and I hate it. This is when everything goes quiet and still, and the sky gets a sort of yellowish hue to it, and there's no wind, and no breeze, and no movement of any kind. Just quiet and still and ominous. And for this weather, I recommend Bellman and Black by Diane Setterfield. Diane Setterfield wrote The 13th Tale, which you might be familiar with. It's another gripping story. Bellman and Black is about a boy who kills a crow with a slingshot when he's young, and that kind of curses him a little bit. Anyway, he grows up though, and he's very successful, and he's married, and he has a family. And then one by one, everyone around him starts to die. And a very strange man in a black suit starts showing up at all of the funerals. And then eventually, he starts showing up everywhere. And then one day, the two finally have a conversation, and the strange man has a proposition for him. A very mysterious business called Bellman and Black. This book has that unsettled, ominous vibe to it. A little otherworldly, but mostly that rock in your stomach kind of feeling. I definitely recommend reading this all in one sitting so that you don't carry that feeling around with you for like a week. But it's so good. Perfectly pleasant.
And finally, I wanted to end on a happy note. So this type of weather is perfectly pleasant. This is a perfectly sunny day, maybe with a little breeze, when the sun isn't too hot and the clouds don't bring any rain. For this type of weather, I recommend Garden Spells by Sara Addison Allen. Sara Addison Allen is one of my favorite authors. She writes magical realism set in the South. They're cute, charming, and the perfect books for perfect days. This book follows Claire Waverly, who lives in her grandmother's home and uses the magical backyard garden to create some pretty unique delicacies. She can bake luck into cookies, love into cupcakes, and even jealousy into some lemon scones. But one day her estranged sister shows up, and together the two rebuild their relationship and navigate new love and second chances together. This book has super practical magic vibes to it, from the ancestral family home to the adorable way that magic is portrayed, and of course some really strong sisterly vibes. And I would recommend any other Sara Addison Allen books for perfectly pleasant weather.
So, there you go. 8 weather patterns, 8 book recommendations. So I know that book recommendations can sometimes be risky, because you might recommend a book to me that I might otherwise love, I just wasn't in the mood for it. So I'm hoping that by pairing it to the weather, you can make sure that that's the vibe that you really want to go for, and then you can find a new book to fall in love with. I'll also be doing another one of these for YA books and middle grade books, so be on the lookout for those. But in the meantime, I want to hear from you. What is your go-to rainy day book? And what books do you bring to the beach or the pool? Let me know in the comments below because I'm always on the lookout for my next great read. And then tell me how you feel. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you loved it, hit subscribe. And don't forget to ring the bell, because I'll be bringing you bookish and witchy content every week. And as always, happy reading!